Raiders versus Chargers recap show starts right now. Welcome back, everybody, to another edition of Night of the Shield. Today, we are going to be talking about the Raiders and Chargers Monday night matchup. But before we get started, if you're returning to this channel, thank you once again. Make sure you hit that like button. And if you're new here, think about hitting that subscribe button as you can be updated to every video that I upload. We got a lot of talk about today. We obviously lost 28-14. And, there's a lot of talk going around the Raider Nation about exactly what happened and what we saw Monday night. So I do want to start off by prefacing once again the way that I take the season, okay? I break it up into quarters, and obviously that was the last game of the first quarter. And, I'm not even going to, we could talk about, hey, were the Raiders exposed? The Raiders have been exposed since week one. We know what the weakness on this team is, and we're going to talk about that today. But before we get started, I want to start with the positives. And I want to talk about this defense real quick. That was the highlight of Monday night because I believe, once again, they did their job. Yes, they gave up 28 points. Some of those points, they were put in a bad situation, and some of those points, they were just beat. One of the things that I felt that they need to improve on, at least from that game, is covering the flat. They were exposed on the flat this game. If you watch the first three games, the gang tackling in the flats was on point. For some reason in this game against a guy that could really do damage both in the passing game and running game, we did a poor job covering him. He had like 117 rushing yards plus some passing yards, and we were getting killed in the flat all game. And I don't know if that had to do with, trying to get into Herbert's head, but, defensively, we still held up. Even with the injuries in the secondary, we kept Williams and Allen in check. I think that we got into Herbert. Once again, we need to turn these pressures into sacks. And I don't understand, even when back in the day when we had Mack, it was the same thing, even with Farrell and Crosby. And I think a good point was made. At what point do we, if we're going to give Yannick the same treatment we give Farrell, right? Like, he's not getting sacks. He's getting a ton of pressures. But, again, I think Yannick has also given Max Crosby his opportunity, his bread. And I think as what you're seeing mostly from our sacks, it's coming from the middle of our rush, which is something that I personally wanted for years, is a pass rush from the middle. And I think Phylon and Solomon Thomas and Q-Jack, I think all these guys are providing that. But I think that has a lot to do with our two edge rushers, Crosby and Yannick. Man, I'm having trouble talking today. Maybe I just need to slow down. I got so much in my head right now. But from a defensive standpoint, there's definitely areas. I'm telling you, I'm having a hard time talking. Areas that need to be focused on first and foremost, right? We got to correct that flat coverage for sure. We need to shore up our running game again. And, most importantly, we have some injuries in the secondary now. We have to see how that all works out and what that's going to look like. But I'm pretty confident in Gus Bradley's scheme, and that's been the highlight in the first quarter for me. Nobody expected this defense to be as good as it is now. But is this defense great? Is this defense playing at a level that they could take over and control this whole season? No, they're not. We still need a lot of work from our offense, and that, unexpectedly, is where we're struggling. And before we get into the offense, I do want to address the Joey Bosa comment. Now, I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this because I think everybody should know what that's all about. Okay, number one, is Derek Carr, shooken when he's hit? What quarterback isn't? I think that's been the mantra that I've been hearing around YouTube. I don't pay attention to mainstream media anymore, everyone. Things will be reported through YouTube to the content creators that I listen to, and I take that with a grain of salt because, the mainstream media is looking for our reaction. They're looking for clicks. They're looking for hits. They want us to watch. They want us to react because that just generates the buzz to them. So I usually don't pay attention to mainstream media, just first and foremost. If someone brings something up and I think it's worth me just checking out to see what was said, but normally I don't like to pay much attention to what is said on there. But I think that's what Joey Bosa is doing here. Joey Bosa is getting a hit. Joey Bosa is getting some attention. Joey Bosa is also trying to get into Derek Carr's head. Let's make no mistake about it. We're still a good football team. The Chiefs are still good football team. The Broncos are still in this hunt at 3-1. So, this division is still up for grabs. There's a lot of competitiveness this year in the AFC West. And if Joey Bosa has an opportunity to get in Derek Carr's head, maybe get him a little upset, maybe think about every time he gets hit, maybe he's just planting a seed for a competitive edge. Because I think Joey Bosa is definitely smart enough to understand that's, when you watch the tape, he gets shook. He's been shook all year, but I think there was a great point made. If he crumbles under pressure so much, why did he go 9 for 10, 77 yards and 2 touchdowns in the third quarter? It's totally not the case. Everybody's going to get shook in those moments. In fact, after Phylon just leveled Herbert in that game, I think Herbert came back with the next pass and he just couldn't. And the announcers even talked about how he was so shook, and you could see that he way too early threw that ball, and he threw it high because there was pressure coming. He knew it was coming, so he rushed the play. So, Herbert was doing the same thing. The difference is, they were able to connect and make a little bit more plays than we were. And that's where I want to start talking about the offense. I'm done talking about is Derek Carr shooken under pressure. Every quarterback in the National Football League is. Ask Patrick Mahomes, who is arguably the best quarterback in this league right now. Look what happened to him in the Super Bowl. If you could get pressure on any quarterback, they will crumble. That is just a fact. So again, that emphasis goes towards the scheme and the offensive line, period. And that's where we're headed right now. That's exactly where we're headed. We're going to be talking heavy about this offensive line and my thoughts on this. And before we get started on this, I want to give a big shout out to Sanjeet. That guy, hey, I love your videos. Your all 22 breakdown of that first half is on point. And even though we may disagree on a few things that you talk about in that video, you're on point, man. And I think and there's nothing, first and foremost, I'm not saying that Sanjeet was wrong in that video whatsoever. We're all masters and confident in our own opinions. We are experts of our own opinion, and everybody's opinion counts. And I think what we're seeing here across the board right now is people trying to figure out exactly what's wrong with this Raiders offense. And it's much easier to blame it on one thing than to look at it as a collective whole. So what I'm going to do right now is look at it from a different perspective and break it down in the order that it is received, in the order that it flows, and everything that we saw, no matter if it's good or bad, this is the way that it essentially works. Number one, you have John Gruden, the head coach. You have John Gruden, the offensive coordinator, and you have John Gruden, the offensive play caller. So it starts there. So when people are saying that John Gruden sucks or John Gruden can't call an offense or John Gruden, that's false. I'm going to put that first and foremost, that is false, because John Gruden would not have had this team at 3-1 if he didn't know what he was doing. John Gruden would not have a Super Bowl championship ring if he didn't know what he was doing. And I know the argument there is he inherited a Tampa team and the Tampa had the defense and we were dominated by defense, but he also took that Brad Johnson quarterback, who Brad Johnson ain't no Hall of Famer, right? And if you look at that season, at the beginning of the season, he wasn't that good in this offense. But by the playoffs and into that Super Bowl against us, Brad Johnson was prepared and ready. He still was a game manager. He was nothing special. I'm not saying that. But John knows what he's doing, and John knows how to manage people. He's a good motivator. He puts good people around him, and he gives people opportunity. His offense is designed to be efficient towards his way of thinking football. So for us to judge John Gruden based off what we feel he should be is 100% completely wrong. It's not going to make any sense and translate to anything. The other point I want to make, John Gruden is never in his career at this point going to be anything like the offenses of the Rams, the Saints, the Chiefs. He's not going to mix it up and start changing it on the fly and create all these mismatches. And I know that's been really effective in the National Football League when especially you look at some of these high-powered offense and what they're able to do with their play calling and really changing the way that they attack things. But when I watched that all 22 tape from Sanjeet, there's nothing wrong with the play calling. Number one, when John Gruden calls a play, and Derek Carr has said this, now we're going to start heading into the Derek Carr part of this, right? When John Gruden calls a play, Derek Carr has said in many pressers, that there's a lot of variations to that play that he calls. And once Derek Carr gets to play and gets to the line of scrimmage, it's Derek Carr's job to analyze what he's seeing on the field. And, the one thing that Derek Carr misses is Rodney Hudson. Hands down, I'm not even going to talk about the play of Andre James because that's all been well noted and everything. We not only do we miss the ability of Rodney Hudson's ability to block and do all that, we also miss Rodney Hudson's ability to help Derek Carr process the information, get the offensive line lined up and in the right direction. So he is missing that element this year, and I think that has a major impact on how he's seeing the field. So Derek Carr in every play has an option to call an audible within the play that is called. Run, pass, different variations of the run, different variations of the pass. There's multiple. John Gruden designs a very complex offensive scheme. His book has been known and talked about to be so thick and complex. That's why it's so hard. You can't just become on this offense and be a master or pick up right away what they're doing on offense, because there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to process in a John Gruden offense. And one of those things is with every play, there's multiple variables of that play in that one play call. So it is part of Derek Carr's responsibility once he gets that play to put them in the right decision and the right position to make that play work. Okay, that's Derek Carr's job. So it doesn't matter if the first 15 plays are scripted. Those plays have different variables. And once John Gruden calls that, it's Derek Carr. And I'm not even saying Derek Carr did not call the right play. If he didn't call an audible, he ran with what he saw. He felt like it was within the parameters of the offensive scheme and they were going to run it. So that leads me right into the third part of this equation, which is execution. Now it's all about the players that you drafted, the players that you got off of free agency, that you put on this team that is starting in this game, that practice in practice to execute the play. And when you look across the board, the only thing that's not being fully executed at a high level is this offensive line. And this is where I kind of disagree with Sanjit. All right, this is the only thing out of that whole video that I disagree with Sanjit. Sanjit still is standing up for this offensive line. Sanjit still wants to say, hey, it's not all on the offensive line. You're right, and he's right in that sense. But let's not make no mistake about it. The games start in the trenches, defensively and offensively. Our secondary has played much better this year because of the play of our front seven, and primarily that defensive line. They've been on point, right? They might not be getting the sacks, but they're definitely getting pressures and messing with the quarterback's rhythm. And that totally helps the secondary in coverages and being able to guess routes. And it's going to be really, really interesting when we go up against Kansas City Chiefs, because they move with the pocket a lot and extend plays. So that's when we'll really see where this defense is at the moment. But our offensive line continues to blow assignments. They continue not to make holes. I mean, Josh Jacob, yes, was injured, but if you saw on some plays, he still ran hard. He still powered through the play. There was just no holes. People were missing assignments. I mean, Sanjit does a great job breaking down that video and showing where Simpson blew a double coverage. He stuck on his double block and didn't come back and stop the defender from knocking Jacobs into the ground. It was constant. And when it comes to Derek Carr and any other quarterback, Derek Carr is huge on trust. You hear him in the pressers talk about it all the time. Derek Carr plays his game off trust. He puts trust in his receivers. He wants to see it in practice. They build that rapport. Hey, if they do it good in practice and they show me that they can make that play, I'm going to throw it in the game. I trust them to make that play. I will give them an opportunity to make a play in the game. And we see that on tape. It's the same thing with this offensive line. So once the offensive line started this game, I mean, the offensive line through the whole half, you can go watch Sanjit's tape. Every single play is not absolutely 100% horrible. You're right. But majority of them are. And once you get that in your head and you can't trust your offensive line to give you the time you need to get the ball downfield, it totally messes up the offensive rhythm. And again, we could ask quarterbacks to stay in there and take a beating. Derek Carr chooses not to. And he's gotten much better at it this year. But I think it's starting to wear on him. And I think if you look at that presser and he goes, yeah, I know what the problem is. I'm not going to address it here. That's not my style. He's not talking about John Gruden. He's talking about that offensive line. That offensive line needs to adjust. All right. Now, granted, we got people in position, guys that just been put on this team. I can't Luminor, and we got Simpson. Our guards, it was funny because I was talking about our guards just last week, and I thought, well, the guards are not that much of an issue. Well, I take that back. I was wrong, and I'm fine admitting that I was wrong. Our tackles, you got Colton Miller, and then you got Leatherwood. Leatherwood, he's on that Colton Miller path. At what point do we start to evaluate Leatherwood, though, to say, could we get more out of him at guard? And that was one of the big debates that I seen after the game was, should we put Parker in there? Parker seemed to be better, but we haven't seen Parker enough to see if that would even work out. He didn't win the job over Leatherwood. Did he not win the job over Leatherwood because they had to back up their draft pick, and because he went first overall, they feel obligated to do the Colton Miller treatment and play him and let him learn on the fly? At some point you have to make the right call, the right adjustment, and put players in positions to succeed. And there's a need there at right guard as well. So could we move Leatherwood over? It reminds me of Robert Gallery. Does everybody remember the Robert Gallery signing? Another first-round draft pick. We brought him in to be our standout left tackle, and he just was not a left tackle. But we moved him in to left guard, and he had a pretty successful career, and he was really, really good at playing the guard and getting out in space, and they would roll him out, and he would block down the field for the running backs. Maybe Leatherwood ends up becoming that guy. I'm not saying it's time to make that move, but it's time to start at least thinking about, what is the best thing for this football team when it comes to Leatherwood? Should he be a guard or should he be a tackle? I don't think you take that conversation off the table. And at this point, I don't know if it's wise to even do that. It's only been 4 games. Okay. We have 13 games to go, and there's a lot of football yet to play. But my biggest point that I wanted to make collectively, okay, is to say John Gruden sucks as a play caller is 100% false. This is his designed offense. He's been very successful in this league. He has different variables to every play call. It's just as much Derek Carr's responsibility to line them up in the right situation as it is for John Gruden to call the play. And then it always comes down to execution. And let's be honest, the Chargers not only did they have a very good defensive scheme Monday night, they executed it well. And so when you out execute the other team, that's where you separate yourself. If you're a good football team, right, and you're going up against another good football team, the winner of that game is going to be who executes the best, both sides of the ball. And we just got outplayed. And that is a fact. So it's not John Gruden. It's not all on Derek Carr. It's a team sport. It goes to the whole 11 people that were there on the field, and it also goes into the coaching staff, getting people prepared, getting them ready to execute these plays, getting their mindset where it needs to be. All of these are factors in what we saw in offense. And I know this even dates back. People talk about 11 straight games in the first drive. Look, what difference does it make at the end of the day if you're winning football games? I don't even care about last year. Last year is last year. Boom. It's carrying over to this year, which it is a problem. We need to fix it. We need to start faster. We need to get points on the board. We need to be more competitive in the first half to give ourselves the opportunities. We keep finding ourselves behind in games, and when we were winning those games, we're all excited and talking about our heart, which we still show. We still showed heart. We still showed fight. We were just in a hole against a good team, and we couldn't get out of it. And we were in a bigger hole because we went into half at 21-0. So we were 21 points behind, not 14 points behind. And it was highly talked about. If we fall behind against the Chargers, it's not going to be the same catching up. And that played itself out as well. So we definitely need to start faster. That does need to be a point of emphasis. But at the end of the day, if we're winning games, it's just about just win, baby. And that's what we talk about. But when we lose, we want to put more focus on it because we're frustrated, we're mad. It's the number one reason why I don't make instant reaction videos. I don't come on anymore. I used to take phone calls. Man, it's just too hard. When you're a fan, and I'm a fan, obviously, it's really hard to be logical when I'm emotional. Hell, it's even hard now to even attempt to be logical when you're a fan because I'm still emotional about it. I don't like losing. I hate watching this team lose. It gives me anxiety. I can't stand it. But to sit here and try to pick that one thing and blame it on one person and just degrade one person on this football team, it takes away from the idea that the NFL is a team sport. It's one of the biggest team sports that I know of right now. It's the ultimate team sport. You're about as good as the person next to you. And it carries over throughout the whole offense, the whole defense, coaching staff, all of it. Can Gruden do a better job calling plays? Yeah, I'm sure there's a couple of plays that he called that he'd like to take back. Just like I'm sure Derek would like to maybe look at it from a different perspective and call a different variable. That's on Derek, that's on John, and that's on this whole team and not executing what has been called. we are not executing properly, especially in the first half of games. So I'm not going to sit here and continue to rant on that. I think I made my point very clear. If you want to find that one thing that matters to you and one thing that you want to lay your hat on to say this is wrong, then you have every right to do so. And I encourage you to continue to do so. Because I mean, that's you got to be the master. You got to be the master of your own opinion, right? You have to own your opinion. You have to believe in what you speak. And from my perspective, it's all across the board. The whole blame goes on everybody, But this offense, when it's firing and John Gruden's calling the same plays and doing his same style, and we win a game and we dominate, that's because they executed just as much more as it is he called the right play. So let's get off John's ass about it. Let's get off Derek's ass about it. Let's, all the blame can't be put on the offensive line, but let's face it, it starts in the trenches. They're carrying the biggest load of it right now. Henry Ruggs is improved. Brian Edwards is improved. Hunter Renfrow has gone to a whole nother level. That guy is the ultimate football player. We still got Darren Waller. Enough said. Yeah, we got our running backs that are beat up. Let's talk about how come Drake is not even a factor at this point. Kenyon Drake is not a factor on this football team. I'm even starting to think that might even be getting to Drake, and Drake might want to be done. He might want to be out of here. He's not contributing whatsoever, and they're also not calling his number. So I don't know what's going on there. Jalen Richard's not on the field yet. Jalen Richard could definitely be replacing Kenyon Drake at this point because we've seen production from Richard. He knows this offense. He fits in it well. He complements Jacobs enough. Drake is definitely not a complimentary back. We all thought he was going to be a complimentary back to Jacobs. That's not the case. Peyton Barber's in concussion protocol. We'll see how that plays out. Jacob's still dealing with an ankle. There's a lot more going on than just the offensive line system. You're exactly right, when it comes to that. But I will say it all does start with that offensive line. If we don't fix that offensive line, it's going to carry over. They're the key factor on how we execute every single play, whether it's passing or running this football. Anyways, I can go on about this all day. I look at it as a team effort, but in all honesty, it does start with that offensive line. The offensive line obviously needs to play much better so we can execute. Derek Carr had a bad game. He's done great the first 3 games, right? Against the Ravens, the Steelers, and the Dolphins, Derek Carr figures it out. He does a good job. I'm not worried about Derek Carr like most people are, but, in this particular game, could he have done a better job, putting them in better positions during audibles? Yes. John Gruden, could he done a better job play calling? There's no stat. There's no evidence to that. We can't base off execution whether or not John Gruden's calling a good game or not. But in all fairness, we have to put it on his shoulders because he is the offensive coordinator, and it is his responsibility that these guys are ready to go and execute the plays that he's calling. So, yeah, it's on all of their shoulders. It's across the board. But I will say this. Derek Carr is not a bad quarterback. Derek Carr doesn't totally collapse throughout a whole game if he's been hit a couple of times. And this offensive line does need help. So John Gruden is not a horrible coach. He's not a horrible play caller. He's the master of his own creation, which is this offense. It wins us games. It ranks numbers. Look at the numbers. Look at Carr's numbers in the last 3 years. They up and up. They get better and better and better. You can't put that on Gruden, guys. We got to understand that Gruden, this is his offense. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. He's going to play his style. We don't have to like it, right? We don't have to like it, especially when we play like that and we lose. He needs to do a better job of getting these guys ready to execute. But anyway, I'm rambling again. Love you guys. Raider Nation, stay tuned. We'll be talking Bears, Raiders here in the next few days. And yes, we have our hands full there too because, again, this offensive line, and that's a good defensive front. And even if they're not playing at a high level, they're going up against our offensive line. And our offensive line needs some adjustments. They got to be ready to give this offense an opportunity to execute. So until next time, thank you for watching. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, hit that like button, get this video out there. And until next time, stay Raider strong.